Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me on this epic Sunday afternoon. Moving on, I've had the pleasure of meeting our guests for today's program at some amazing conventions while attending many of his incredible lectures. Now, our guest on today's program has uncovered many secrets guarded by such groups, such esoteric groups like the Illuminati, and he has been called the real life Robert Langdon from, if you remember, from the Dan Brown series, the Da Vinci Code. He's the author of 17 books and many DVD presentations, such as The Judgment Day Device. He specializes in ascension teachings for all ages and appears regularly on the hit History Channel series Ancient Aliens. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our guest for today's program, investigative mythologist and author, William Henry. Hello, William. How are you?
Very well, Bruce. How are you? Thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, it's great to have you on. I'm great. I'm doing great. Thank you so much for joining us, William, for joining us on the program. Now, let's talk about the anticipation for this year's Conscious Life Expo. You always give. You there, Will?
Yeah, I'm here. Your voice was cutting out. I think I barely caught you asking a question about the Conscious Life Expo.
We'll just back up for a second. Bruce, your internet connection just cut out. Just go ahead and repeat.
Oh, my goodness. Sorry about that, Will. Now, I wanted to ask you about the anticipation for this year's Conscious Life Expo. You always give such amazing lectures at the event. What topics will you be covering at this year's LA Conscious Life Expo, Will?
Well, lots of anticipation about the event. It's always the kickoff for the year. It's a huge event. It's wonderful to get out there to LA and see all my old friends and new friends and acquaintances. Wonderful event. The LAX Hilton is one of my favorite places to go for an event. Everybody's just kind of in the place together, and it's just you're always bumping into people. It's just really exciting. And this year I'm talking about my presentation is called Angels, Aliens, and the Book of Love. It's a presentation based in part on my book, The Secret of Sion, but also drawing from my new book, which is called The Watchers, Lost Secrets of Ascension, Resurrection, and Perfection. And as you said in the introduction, my specialty is the ascension teachings of all ages and different spiritual traditions. And what I'm going to be doing in Angels, Aliens, and the Book of Love is talking about how at the foundation of the ancient ascension stories was always a mention or some kind of a riff on the existence of what are referred to as the tablets of destiny, or the tablets of the gods. The Gnostic Christians refer to it as the Book of Love. This is an actual tablet or book of knowledge that is specifically geared towards assisting us in completing our own ascension. And the idea is that it's ultimately it's like our passcode, if you will, for advancing beyond the earth plane.
Wow, that's amazing. And that's what you will be covering at this year's workshop at the LAX Hilton?
That's right. It'll be on Saturday from 4 to 5:30 in the Carmel Room, and it's going to be an exciting presentation because there's a couple other speakers actually talking about ascension. One of them in particular borrows quite a bit of my material, so I'm glad to see that aspect of it's being covered. But what I'll be looking and presenting here is actually what the ancients said was the very basis for the idea of ascension and how we are to incorporate these teachings into our lives. Part of one aspect of the story will involve the Anunnaki, a group of extraterrestrials familiar to many people, especially the readers of Zecharia Sitchin's work. Mr. Sitchin really focused on the mundane or material aspects of the Anunnaki. But what I learned early on and was introduced to by reading his books is that the Anunnaki had all kinds of spiritual teachings as well, and these often aren't discussed, and this is what I put together for this presentation and also in my book, The Watchers.
simply amazing. Now, I remember, Will, at the last lecture I attended, you were talking about how technology is merging with the human body. And, we see Motorola patenting these products that can actually read your thoughts before you even say a word. Tell us a little bit about that lecture. Do you recall touching up on those topics at
Yeah,
last
I
year's
sure
expo?
do. And in fact, on my website, which is williamhenry.net, I have an online presentation called Playing God, The Next Human is Here. And in this presentation, I go through in an hour and a half. It's kind of like a long news flash of stories literally pulled from the headlines about how we're meshing our flesh with digital technology and the dangers of this for our ultimate spiritual well-being. And it's happening so fast, and the average individual is simply not aware of this acceleration of this technology and how the major corporations in Silicon Valley are aiming this technology at human skin. We're literally in the process of blending or merging four key technologies: our genetic technology, our nanotechnology, our neuroscience, and our our brain science, and merging them all into one cohesive and seamless technology that's aimed at the skin, breaking the skin barrier and literally creating a new skin for humanity.
That's absolutely incredible. That obviously can't be good for your health. I mean, we could definitely see some type of cancer coming from via all these type of devices they're trying to put into humanity.
Well, I mean, we're so close to crossing this skin barrier, and that's where it gets really alarming. As if it's not bad enough. I mean, we live in this pollution, a matrix of pollution, electromagnetic and otherwise, and we're being transformed by our interaction with the computer. It changes our brains, it changes our social dynamics, and now it's about to change our bodies. Our bodies are about to be subsumed or consumed by a new super advanced internet that's coming online that will feature artificial intelligence, and all of us will be forced to be part of an actual node, a data bus on this new internet. Microsoft has patents for the human body as a data bus as well as an electrical device. And so you start to see this, and you clearly realize that this is going to happen within the next 5 years. What we're seeing now is, and by the way, I started writing about this in 2003 in my book, The Cloak of the Illuminati. And when I wrote that book, this was the conclusion of the book. I ended the book with a government report that was encouraging. It was the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency that was encouraging the fusion of these technologies and aiming them at the skin. And in 2003, I thought we were probably 2 to 3 decades away from that. And here we are just a little over 10 years later, and we're already seeing signs of it in the marketplace. We're Google, Apple, all the companies are going into the wearable computer mode, where we're going to take our phone out of our hand and begin to wear it on our body instead. Well, that's an intermediate phase. That's a stepping stone that's going to last 2 to 3 years maybe. By 2020, they will have this technology introduced where we're going to be putting the temporary tattoos on our skin, but that is just the preamble for actually going into the skin. And I believe it's 5 years away at most.
Amazing. Just like Hitler's Germany, only these tattoos have RFID. Incredible.
Yeah, exactly. And the promise of this is that we can transform, that the human body is meant to be transformed and, in fact, is meant to be perfected. This is a mindset that actually began with the invention of eyeglasses. With the invention of eyeglasses came the idea that the human body is improvable. Before that, the church's position was, hey, if God wanted you to see, darling, he would have given you a good set of eyes. So sit down, shut up. There's nothing you can do about it. But then the invention of eyeglasses comes along, and it's like, hey, wait a minute. If we can improve our eyesight, what else can we improve? Well, here we are in the turn of the 21st century. We blink an eye, and here comes Google Glass, introducing wearable technology that we can just put on our, instead of eyeglasses, put on the Google Glass. We're wired to the internet 24/7, recording every conversation that we're having. We're in a blink of an eye, put it up on Facebook, whatever we want to do. And that's just the start. And I believe that the human body is indeed improvable. I believe that humans have within their capability to even perfect themselves. And by perfecting themselves, it means become more compassionate, to become more whole, more holy, more complete beings, or perfect beings. And the only way that we can actually really do that is through spiritual technology. And I believe that if we start meshing our flesh with digital technology, we are not going to be able to attain our spiritual potential, to say the least. And in fact, we're going to actually be more than likely becoming slaves to some unknown agency or group in God knows where.
Absolutely. We're on the verge of losing our humanity if we become robots, if we merge with robots, right?
Exactly. Einstein said that we can't solve our problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them. And in order to solve our current problems, the next human will have to emerge. And I'm all for the next human coming on the world stage. But I believe that the next human is going to have to be more compassionate, going to have to be more intelligent, going to have to be more cosmically oriented. And the next human isn't going to have an Apple logo on its rear end or in its eye or a Motorola logo, or as exemplified in Matt Damon's amazing movie Elysium, where people are segregated because they have the wealth and the technology to do these kinds of things. And that reality is upon us, and it's up to us now to say, wait a minute, bits, atoms, neurons, genes, these are great technologies individually, but you put them all together, bits B, atoms A, neurons N, genes G, bang. This is going to blow up on us. And
it definitely is.
Most aren't aware of where we're at. The next human is here, and he's stepping out of Silicon Valley, stepping out of Hollywood, and we're being shown this on a daily basis, and we have to decide the limits of this technology, because what we're doing is really playing God instead of transforming ourselves into more divine beings.
Amazing. Truly amazing, William. You're hitting it right on the money. Now, tell us about your experience on Ancient Aliens. Truly a fascinating show. There's not much they get wrong on that program. Very factual and very entertaining as well. What topics have you tackled on Ancient Aliens, Will?
Well, it's a great show. Really enjoy it. I've been a talking head on the show for, I guess, about 4 years now. They tend to use my stories. They go to my website, and they, like recently, Friday night, January, the 24th, was Aliens and Stargates. A story pulled right off my website about the ancient Egyptian Osiris device, about a technology that's portrayed on the walls of the Temple of Seti at Abydos. They've done my stories on the U.S. Capitol. We've got one coming up on my research on the Large Hadron Collider at CERN. And so I appreciate the way they kind of tackle it, because these guys there, they do extensive research. They've got a team of really great producers there. And having interacted with them for these years, I see a consistency in their approach. They're really hard workers, and they genuinely want to get to the bottom of these questions about who are these ancient aliens, where did they come from, what are they doing here, and what's their relationship with us. And that interest goes all the way to the top of Prometheus Studios, the company that makes the show. So it's been a pleasure to be involved with Ancient Aliens.
Really an amazing show, and a reminder to our listeners, many of these personalities will be there at the Conscious Life Expo giving lectures and workshops, right, Will?
Yeah, in fact, on Friday night, which is going to be a highlight, we're doing an Ancient Aliens panel with Linda Moulton Howe, Mike Barra, Nick Redfern, and Jason Martell, as well as Serena Wright-Taylor. So it's going to be a really exciting time to spend a couple hours together, doing a lot of Q&A and just kind of interacting and talking about the show.
Incredible. Now, William, I want to ask you, how did it feel to receive the Lifetime Achievement Award by a man who really needs no introduction in AM radio, in the AM radio world, that being George Norrie? How did it feel to receive that honor?
Well, it was very exciting, actually, Bruce. I mean, it came kind of out of the blue. I mean, I don't think of myself as having done a lifetime's worth of work. I'm 50 years old, and you think that, wow, you're going to get a Lifetime Achievement Award maybe when you're, 70 or something like that, A
little older, right.
But I have been at it 20 years now and been publishing books since 1996, and it was a really awesome experience. Greg Braden was there to present the award with George, as was Daniel Brinkley. And early on, I met Greg in 1995. I went to one of his presentations here in Nashville, and I told him there at the event what an influence he had been on me and how he kind of set the bar, paved the way for showing, not only what to do, but how to do it. And early on, when I started giving presentations, Daniel became a good friend, and he was instrumental in kind of giving me some motivation and some encouragement to really get out there. So it was great to see George, and who I have a long-term relationship with, having been the second guest that he interviewed on Coast to Coast back in 2002. Wow. And so it's just really, truly an honor.
That's a good point you bring up. You were actually one of his first guests on his new show that airs on Gaiam TV, which is Beyond Belief. You guys discussed the secret purpose of the Ark of the Covenant, also what you have dubbed the Judgment Day device. Tell us about that.
Well, it's a book about the Ark of the Covenant, but it's not like the usual books that you read about the Ark, because something that surprised me is that most of the books that you read on the Ark don't really discuss what the Ark of the Covenant actually is. And part of the reason why they don't do that is that they don't give a complete description. They don't account for all the pieces of the Ark. If you read the popular books about the Ark of the Covenant, you come away with the impression that it's a golden box. Right. But it's more than that. There are more pieces, tools, and instruments to it. The analogy I make is that the usual books about the Ark are, if they were writing a book about a computer, they would say, look at that box on the desk there. That's the computer. But then later you learn that actually there's a keyboard that goes with it, there's a mouse, there's a power cord, there's a screen, there's software inside it, and there's advanced consciousness that made it. And so what I tried to do in the Judgment Day device and looking at the Ark is say, okay, the Bible says that there are other tools or implements in the Ark. It was made to contain the tablets of the Ten Commandments. It holds the rod of Aaron. It holds a flask of manna. And it also holds a cruse of anointing oil. And when I looked at that, I started to think, well, wait a minute. That sounds like a kit of tools. What if you fully assembled that kit? Then what would you have? Well, you would have this amazing device that I called the Judgment Day device, because according to prophecy, it's going to be recovered at Judgment Day either by Jesus, according to the Christians, the Messiah, according to the Jews, or the Mahdi, according to Islam. And in fact, all three of the great three religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, have prophecies about the recovery of the Ark of the Covenant at the end times and how it will be used. And my point is that, well, guys, if you're thinking the Ark of the Covenant is a simple golden box and aren't accounting for these other tools or implements, you stand a really good chance of being scammed by somebody if they try to tell you that the Ark is just a golden box, because it's not. It's not in Ethiopia. It's not even on the planet. It's an interdimensional device, and it's far more profound and conscious than most people realize. And that's what I attempted to explore in the book, is to say, wait a minute, here's the complete Ark of the Covenant kit. Here's the spiritual training that people underwent preparatory to using it, and here's how you can connect with it.
Amazing. Now, I want to ask you this, Will. Do you believe that Hitler had access to this weapon in his time? Is it fair to even call the Ark of the Covenant a weapon?
No, it's not. I don't think. It can be utilized as a weapon, but to present that as the first and foremost application of the Ark limits it. It again is usually coming from that mindset that thinks of it as a simple golden box. because when you follow the Bible, and all you have to do to get the complete story of the ark is to read the Bible. It tells you exactly what happened when the ark was in use. When the ark was installed in the Holy of Holies, the most holy place of Solomon's temple, it filled up that golden cube-shaped room with a rainbow mist. And in between the two seraphim that guarded the Ark of the Covenant would manifest a brilliant pillar of light, described as bright white or rainbow-colored. And from out of that pillar would manifest a luminous humanoid figure. Now, when you read the Bible and it says that, it sounds to me like the Ark of the Covenant is some kind of a portal device, a Stargate device. And that's what it is.
Right.
In fact, there are two Arks of the Covenant. There's one on earth, and according to John the Revelator, he saw one at the throne of God in Sion in heaven. So I started to develop this conception that the Ark of the Covenant is a sort of a Stargate device that has one on earth and one in heaven, and it's used as a way of stepping down in frequency or vibration these very fast-moving beings, these superluminous beings that are actually, we think of them as angels, but they're more like type 3 or type 4 beings on the Kardashev scale. They're non-physical light beings that can take on physicality, and the Ark of the Covenant is used as a tool for them to manifest a physical reality.
Amazing stuff. We'll be right back.
Support MBN, Montalvo Broadcasting Network, and shop with us over at Montalvo Store. Go to ebay.com and search in the advanced search. Type in Montalvo Store. Now support Montalvo Broadcasting Network. We have a wide array of books on conspiracy, apparel, and much more. Support your favorite radio station, Montalvo Broadcasting Network, by visiting Montalvo Store on ebay.com.
Tribal, primitive, rustic, Burning Man, punk rock, conceptual subculture for the edgiest, most cutting-edge designs of jewelry today. Go to etsy.com/shop/conceptual subculture, or one word, either by going to Google or search Etsy, ETSY.com, and type in one word, conceptual subculture. You will find the hottest designs using natural stones with wire wrap rings, rough, raw, genuine, semi-precious gemstone jewelry, solid sterling silver, copper, leather, orgonite, bracelets, pendants, chokers, men's copper cups with sterling accents, eco-friendly, repurposed, original, one-of-a-kind design earrings. Support MBN by going to Conceptual Subculture on Etsy. Go to Antique Obsessions for the hottest in jewelry, antiques, repurposed, solid sterling silver, one-of-a-kind, handmade by Bruce and Jaja. Go to our Facebook, which is Antique Obsessions, or you can go to Etsy.com and go to Antique Obsessions, one word, or type it into your Google and find us there. Thanks.
Joining us is a very special guest, investigative mythologist and author, William Henry. Hello, William. Welcome back.
Thank you, Bruce, very much. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Now, we were talking about the Ark of the Covenant. Now, please continue. You were talking about how the Ark itself it's not fair to call it a weapon. It's more like a chamber, a time machine of sorts, right?
Well, it's a portal device in my view, and I think people think of it as a weapon because there are stories told of it being possibly radioactive. When the Philistines stole it, there were masses of them that were killed as a result of being unprepared to handle the ark, and so they flip it into this idea that it's an advanced weapon, and there's no doubt that people like Adolf Hitler have sought it for the love of power rather than the power of love, which is ultimately what the Ark of the Covenant is. It's a device that's powered by love, that's meant to assist us in our own transformation into divine beings. And so if you're following the path of the Ark, whether you think it's in Ethiopia, Timbuktu, or wherever, and you're trying to present it as a weapon, you're depriving people of access to the consciousness that created the Ark and the ability that the individual has to transform. And that's part of my point in writing the book, is to say, look, we've really got to take a serious look at this from a mystical, esoteric perspective. It's not just a mechanical box. It's way more than that. And only by taking this alternative path do we come close to at least comprehending what we're dealing with.
Absolutely. We're going to touch up on your book and more about the Ark of the Covenant in a little while. But I wanted to ask you, William, as a investigative mythologist, you travel around the world bringing the truth about our ancient ancestors, our history, the history of the human race, that age-old question, where did we come from? Tell us a little bit about your travels and your up-and-coming trip to basically a sacred journey to the portals of southern France. Tell our listeners about that.
Yes, I really started my quest for these mysteries in 1982. I read the book Holy Blood, Holy Grail when it was first published, the very month it was published in 82. I was a sophomore in college, and it introduced me to this idea of this parallel mystery tradition, and talked about various sages and avatars, including Jesus, that had access to these secrets and how they were persecuted by the religious and political authorities throughout time. And so ever since then, I've been pulling on this golden thread, so to speak, of these mysteries. And always what you discover is that at the heart of these ancient mysteries is the core idea that humans have the ability to transform into what we think of as angels or more divine beings. And all along, the establishment religious authorities have sought to keep those teachings from ordinary individuals. Perhaps they're doing so for benevolent reasons. They might be misused. Hitler or somebody might come along and try to use them to weaponize them or whatever.
Right.
But there are various places around the world where you find that are noted as repositories for these teachings. And one of these places is in southern France. It's the area around Rennes-le-Château and what's known as the Languedoc region. It's an area with a very rich ancient history going back thousands and thousands of years. People have been coming to this area and depositing secrets for eons. And it's the land there itself is considered to be sacred. In fact, I believe that the land itself might have the mystery teachings actually encoded within the rocks and the streams and the trees, as if you're walking into just a giant area that's capable of transforming you just by being there. This is the Tibetans call this the Terma tradition, where hidden treasures or hidden mystery teachings are hidden in valleys and in mountains and in other areas. And by going to these places, you're able to tap into these mystery teachings.
Incredible. That's absolutely amazing. Now, I wanted to ask you, did you take any courses in anthropology? Is that something that you would recommend to anyone out there wondering about how do you become a investigative mythologist?
I would recommend more mythology classes, English literature, ancient history. Some good science classes would be great, too, because what we're discovering is just how much modern science is actually mirroring what the ancients could do. I mean, you can go into a Greek mythology class and learn all day how Hermes, the god of crossroads and the translator of the mysteries of heaven and earth, had a helmet that made him invisible, and how he had winged sandals, and how he had a cape that made him superhuman. And then you go to MIT and you look and you say, well, what are you guys working on? Oh, well, we're working on an invisibility cloak and a helmet that you can put on. And we're also working on teleportation. And it's like, well, wait a minute. I've heard this before. You guys are duplicating exactly what the ancient gods had the capability of doing.
Yeah, they're going back and looking through our past, seeing what they can't patent next, right?
Exactly. And so then the question becomes, well, did did Hermes, did Athena, did these ancient gods in Greece, did the Egyptian gods Osiris, Thoth, and all these other guys, were these just extraterrestrials with high-tech toys? Were they flying around in tricked out Benzes and this kind of thing? Probably not, because what they always tell us in these stories is that these are attributes of the divine beings. These are capabilities that they possess within their own consciousness. And that became a real key for me when I realized that all our technology out here is just a reflection of what we're already capable of doing within our body. We don't need an internet if we can develop our psychic ability, for example. Absolutely. And we indeed have the ability to develop spiritual powers that they refer to in India that gives us the power of levitation, the ability to walk through walls, walk on water, instantly materialize our wishes. We don't need nanotechnology for that. We can do it with our mind, with our consciousness. And I'm a big proponent of humanity going down that path instead of trying to duplicate all the attributes of the ancient gods and divine beings through technology. And this is, just something it's a point that some would disagree with me on, that they believe that the ancient aliens that came here, no, they just flew around and tricked out Benzes. There was nothing spiritual about these ancient aliens, and I fundamentally disagree with that. And I'm willing to entertain other people's viewpoints about it, but just the research I've done led me to the conclusion that it's all spiritual. It's all about developing our latent capabilities.
That's right. I mean, just ask the tribes of Utah if the extraterrestrials weren't spiritual, and they'll tell you otherwise, right, Will?
Yeah, exactly. And it's a hard thing to get around, to wrap your mind around as part of it. And I understand that is kind of one reason why people say, oh, they're just flying around in tin can spaceships, But I mean, if you follow that track, then NASA says through their 100-year Starship program, they believe that we will have a warp craft within 100 years, just like Star Trek, which means we'll be a Type 2 or Type 3 civilization within 100 years, where we're going to be able to travel from Earth to Alpha Centauri, not in 75,000 years as it would take in a tin can spaceship, but in 2 weeks, which is what we could do with a warp drive or a Stargate. So wow. If we're able to do that in 100 years or less, then that means that these ancient god beings who came here thousands of years ago were only 100 years in advance of us, spiritual or technologically speaking. And what they ask you to believe is that these god beings never evolved beyond that. And I just can't fathom that. Because imagine where we're going to be in 100 years if we really devote ourselves to bringing these spiritual teachings forward. Right now, for the first time in human history, we have millions of people worldwide doing yoga.
Right. Focusing
on their health, eating the right foods. And that has to have a dramatic effect on the collective of humanity. And so my point is, it's like, well, wait a minute, guys. When we're working on raising our vibration or doing our spiritual work, we're actually having a huge impact on the entire planet and the future of the human race. And I say that in part to inspire and to motivate people, because now is the time where we're going to make a decision. Because if we decide that we're going to allow these Silicon Valley companies to have their way, there will be no such thing as an individual within 10 years. There will only be one being here, and we will all be simply data buses as part of this new artificially intelligent being, whether we call it the matrix, the grid, or whatever term we choose to apply to it.
Right. It will be a transhumanistic nightmare, so to say. Now, Will, tell us about some of your books, starting with one of my favorites, as we mentioned earlier, Cloak of the Illuminati: Secrets, Transformations, Crossing the Stargate. Tell us a little bit about your writing process for this book.
Well, I wrote that book in 2003. I live in Nashville, where we have a copy of a ancient temple called Mount Meru, which was the dwelling of the gods. It was called the Gate of the Gods. It was supposed to be located in a place called Shambhala. And I started following this path that this what this location here in Nashville is actually mirroring this ancient location, and started realizing that the beings that were able to access this portal or gateway had undergone a fundamental transformation. They were no longer humans as they went through this gateway. They dissolved themselves literally into light. And they symbolized this transformation by the acquisition of a bright white garment of light that was called the Pala garment or the miracle garment. And in the book, I show examples of ancient Anunnaki goddesses wearing this miracle garment that enabled her, and her name was Inanna, to access the 7 halls or holes in space that the Anunnaki were frequently traveling on. And so I just started following this path of this cloak or garment of light and realized that it's a transmittable cloak. It's not a literal physical cloak or garment. It's actually a frequency that transforms the body. And I just started following the stories of figures such as Elijah, John the Baptist, Jesus, Mary Magdalene. All of them had teachings about how to acquire this cloak of the illumined ones, or this cloak of the Illuminati, as I referred to it. And as I detailed in the book, when you look up the word Illuminati in the Webster's Dictionary, you find out that the original meaning of the word was newly baptized Christian initiate. And this is because the earliest Christians, the first Christians, were obsessed with acquiring this cloak or garment of light. Why? Right. The reason why was because they knew that this was the only protection against dark powers or forces in the universe. And that if you were able to put on this cloak of the illumined ones, these dark powers wouldn't see you. Therefore, they wouldn't be able to detain you. And based on that, that's what I'm suggesting to people today, is that we are in that exact place. There are, I consider, dark powers or forces on this planet that want to get in your skin. They want to get in your body with their technology. And the only way to resist this, and the only way to push back, is to put on your cloak or garment of light, or what is referred to as the light body, to raise your frequency or vibration. And in so doing, they won't be able to see you, they won't be able to detain you, and they won't be able to ultimately fulfill what they're seeking to do, which is to completely and totally control our souls.
Wow. Absolutely terrifying, just to know that, William. But let's talk about Stargates again. It's something you cover extensively in your work, because those who would consider themselves to be the Nephilim may be duplicating or actually possess the Ark of the Covenant today. Tell us about the Ark, its Egyptian history, and the fact that many believe, I mean, you said it's not on this planet, but there are some that say that Israel might have the Ark of the Covenant.
Well, Israel is certainly seeking the Ark of the Covenant. So was Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, and that was one of the other reasons I wrote the Judgment Day device, is to say, look, again, we really got to take a look at this, because Mahmoud Ahmadinejad believed that he is, and still believes, he is the herald of or forerunner of the Islamic Messiah, the Mahdi. The Mahdi is called the Guided One. He's called the Guided One because he's going to be guided by Allah to recover and reveal the secrets of the Ark of the Covenant. And my point is that if you're thinking the Ark of the Covenant is a golden box made by Moses at the base of Mount Sinai, and that's all it is, then you're so wide open to being deceived by these people, because that is not what the Ark of the Covenant is. The complete Ark of the Covenant is far more profound than that. And if we see some figure show up with some made in China golden box looking like something out of an Indiana Jones movie, we know they're a fake, because that's not the Ark of the Covenant. And my point in saying this is not to deride other people. It's just that, look, when you get beyond the popular books about the Ark, the ones that, most people read, you realize that the people that wrote those books didn't go very deep into the subject. And when you cross over the veil and get beyond the popular books, you discover there are tons of scholarly works about the Ark of the Covenant. And when you realize that, you're confronted with the choice of either staying with the erroneous ark or going with the true ark, and recognizing that what we're talking about here is a device of cosmic proportions. Do the Nephilim have the Ark of the Covenant? No, I don't believe they did. God took the Ark of the Covenant off the planet. It's not on this planet.
Wow.
And it's just a fact. All you have to do is read the Bible. It tells you what happened to the Ark of the Covenant. And I mean, no disrespect to people that believe it's in Ethiopia or it's in the U.S. Capitol or these other places. It's the reason why they can't find the Ark of the Covenant, Bruce, is because they're always sitting on it. Ultimately, it's our body itself. When you fully assemble the Ark of the Covenant, when you take out the box and you go inside the box and you pull out the rod of enlightenment, the rod of Aaron that's inside, that rod actually symbolizes our spinal cord system. The Ark itself is our lower part of our body, in the pelvis area, the lower chakra areas. The two tablets that are placed inside the Ark get placed on top of the rod of enlightenment. In our body, it's the two hemispheres of our brain. When fully functioning, the fully functioning human body secretes an oil called chrism. This is the anointing oil kept in the ark that transmutes the body into light. The pineal gland is the manufacturing plant of these secretions. So if you're thinking the Ark of the Covenant is like in Ethiopia or like they're going to haul it out in Israel, you are completely disavowing your spiritual capability within and not recognizing you are the Ark of the Covenant. And that's exactly what they want you to believe. They don't want you to ever think that this technology is inside of you. So we get all these kind of well-intended but blunderous books that tell you the Ark of the Covenant is in wherever or wherever. And it's not.
No, it's insane. Hollywood has touched on the Ark many times, as you mentioned, in Indiana Jones films. Even Bill and Ted, I saw a publication on your website where it shows Osiris in what looks to be like a telephone booth, like a la Superman. But yeah, you see that Hollywood has sometimes, like Bill and Ted, for instance, they represented the Ark of the Covenant somewhat factually, right?
Somewhat. And this is why it gets, I don't want to accuse it of being disinformation, but another good example is the movie Stargate in Contact. I love those movies. It got me on the Stargate trail. But something I bumped up against is that, in the movie Stargate in Contact, they ask you to believe that flesh can go through a Stargate and can travel to another realm. Well, when you go back, and they have the premise that this Stargate was possessed by the ancients. When you go back and you look at the numerous Stargate stories in myth and sacred tradition, whether it be in Egypt, Samaria, or India, or wherever, you find that these stories of gateways are always accompanied by stories of human transformation into divine beings. Flesh cannot go through a Stargate. This is the fundamental boundary. Flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of heaven. It's what the Bible says. And I'm not trying to come off like a Bible thumper here. I'm just giving you, this is the way the Bible says that, hey, guys, if you want to go through the gateway, that's fine. You can do it. But, darling, your meat sack isn't going with you, and neither is some nuclear missile that you might intend to bring with you. Because they out there don't want, little men out there with their little nuclear weapons in space doing major damage. And so there's a kind of a fail-safe or a protection mechanism that's built in here, that the only way to access these gates is to transform yourself into a divine being. And story after story after story verifies that that's the case. And so I look at movies like Stargate and Contact and say, gosh, it's great entertainment, but is it an actual teaching about Stargates? No, it's more disinformation about Stargates.
Amazing. Yeah, by design, because it's Hollywood. They don't want you in touch with the spiritual being that you are. by design.
Right, but just imagine if they could do a film about that, about showing that transformation. I think we're going to be close to doing that here soon, and I think it could be the most mind-boggling movie ever made.
Sorry about that. I certainly hope so. Now, William, you've been regarded as the real-life Robert Langdon from Dan Brown's book series, The Da Vinci Code. Tell our listening audience about your book, The Illuminator, and the story of Mary Magdalene. Is that really her next to Yeshua in the Portrait of the Last Supper? Tell us about your book, The Illuminator.
Yeah, so my book, The Illuminator, is about Mary Magdalene. The title comes from a 13th century collection of books called the Golden Legend, in which Mary Magdalene is referred to as the Illumined One or the Illuminator. She's considered to be, in this context, the initiator of Jesus. He emerges as her sort of daredevil test pilot. She's an alchemist. She has all these ancient teachings, and especially focused on the production of an oil that can dissolve the body into light. This goes back to the book of Enoch. And, of course, Jesus and Mary Magdalene are considered to be Essenes. It was the Essenes that wrote the story of the Watchers and the Nephilim, and especially told the story of how Enoch was taken to heaven by Michael, who rubbed this oil on his body and dissolved him into glorious rainbow-colored light, just like the Watchers. Well, Mary Magdalene knew the secret of that oil, and I believe that that's the oil that she anointed Jesus with, and it dissolved his body into light in an event that's recorded in the Shroud of Turin, where he dissolves himself into radiant light, is projected through the shroud, and then becomes what's known in the book of Enoch as a translated man or a resurrected being, just like the Watchers. And in fact, this is the subject matter of my new book, Lost Secrets of the Watchers, or the Watchers, Lost Secrets of Ascension, Resurrection, and Perfection. These beings, these super advanced beings, had come to Earth with this teaching about transforming humans into angels or light beings and hooking them up with a cosmic conduit that ultimately led to likely the center of the Milky Way galaxy. And Mary Magdalene was undoubtedly one of their students utilizing these teachings, and this is the reason why when she rolls away the stone on Easter morning and she sees the two angels dressed in white in the tomb and Jesus is gone, she recognizes that these are the Watchers that are there, and they're there because they're the ones who brought this teaching to Earth.
Amazing. Truly amazing. Now, before we're running out of time, Will, but before we go, I wanted to talk about Egypt and how cats actually are perceived as divine beings. Now, I mentioned this because of your late and great cat, Boo. I'm friends on Facebook, so I saw that you posted a picture of your cat, and you know what? He reminds me a lot about my cat, Wesley. Tell us a bit about how cats were perceived in Egypt, and a little bit about your cat,
Well, yeah, and thank you for asking that, Bruce. Yeah, in Egypt, about 12 miles outside of Cairo, is a place called Leontopolis, the city of the lions. And there was located the temple of Bubastis. She is the cat goddess. And literally at this temple, the cats were worshipped. I'll never forget the time, Bruce, I was in the British Museum looking at a beautiful statue of a cat, and the inscription in the British Museum explicitly said that the ancient Egyptians believed that their gods would and could incarnate as cats.
Wow.
And so here at the Temple of Bubastis is where they literally worshipped the cats. Now, what's interesting about this in terms of our conversation is that it was there at Bubastis that the Essenes, when they broke away from Jerusalem in 164 BC, when the Temple of Solomon had been desecrated, they went to Leontopolis, right to the site of the Temple of Bubastis, to build a duplicate of Solomon's temple. And it is there that they wrote the Book of Enoch and began talking about human translation into angels and these beings called the Watchers and their offspring, the Nephilim.
Amazing.
So there seems to be
Amazing,
a really
Will. I'm sorry to cut you off, Will,
with
but
the
we
cats,
are out
with
of time.
Enoch, and human transformation.
Joining us. Thank you so much. Let our listening audience know where they can find you, give out your website, and of course, you're going to be at the Conscious Life Expo this year, right?
That's correct. On February 7th through the 9th, and my website is williamhenry.net, and thank you so much, Bruce. Many blessings to you.
Thank you, Will. We'll see you there.